Here it comes. This is the fun part. You're going to do some stuff. You're going to do a lot of stuff, actually. But here is the 12-week sprint. Here's the calendar and the order you should be doing things. And again, trying to keep it to 2 to 3 hours a week wherever possible to get stuff done. Big old asterisk here. If you want to spend more time, do it. Fully engaged. And as you do this, most people who get involved in this find it a little addictive, right? It's out of the ordinary. It's not their usual day-to-day. So this can be a lot of fun. It's very easy to spend a lot more time on it. Be careful. You still got a day job. You still got stuff to do. You still want to make sure you meet those needs. However, this should be the fastest way to start building that employer brand muscle and building that employer brand capacity inside your company in the shortest period of time. So here we go. Week 1, it's prep week. I know it sounds anticlimactic, right? Oh, I'm just going to prep. But this is the week in which you figure out what your brand really is. What have you decided you're going to focus on? Try not to make it a hashtag. Try not to make it a tagline. Focus on a kind of abstract concept. Amazon's brand is We Pioneer, which means a lot of things. It's also, it's not very public, but that's their idea. That's their headspace. That's the direction they put things. And they express it in lots of different ways. Again, we've talked about Volvo. We've talked about Coke. Nike's a great one. Nike's all about athletics, showing off how everyone's an athlete. That idea isn't actually their tagline. That idea isn't actually on their career site. But just do it means, hey, try being an athlete. Just do it, right? It means just take the chance, take the leap, move forward. It's just work. Just go do it. They never say, hey, Nike is all about making everybody an athlete or everybody feel like an athlete, but that's their brand. That's their concept. They wrap it in pretty things. They wrap it in great commercials and the greatest tagline ever to be written, of course, but that's their core idea. So what's your core idea? What's your core concept? What's this idea that's behind the scenes, but it's everybody's kind of North Star is the direction they're heading. Now, once you have that, how do you localize it? How do you translate that for all the major various functions within the company? And I don't know your company, so I don't know what they are, but it's going to be things like sales, G&A, product. It's going to be development. It's going to be nursing. It's going to be customer support. It's going to be, they're big, you look at your organizational chart. What are the big chunks of people? What do they do? How do you take this core idea, this very vague concept, and say, what does this mean to customer service and what does this mean to development? They sound differently, but they should both be meaning the same thing. This is where you want to spend your time. How do you want them to talk about that idea in their world, in their vernacular? Once you've got a couple of these ideas and you've sketched them out, and honestly, if you have a couple of ways of talking about it for each function, great, right? Give yourself some wiggle room. Start to pressure test these. Do some quick hallway meetings, some quick bump-in meetings, and say, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time? This is the idea of what the company is. One, does this sound like your company? Does it sound like I'm describing the company that you exist in, right? Of all the positive things that you could see in a given day, this is true, correct? Yes. Okay, great. This is how I would express it for you. Which of these ideas sounds most like your team, sounds most like what you offer, sounds most like your experience managing these teams? Oh, it's those two? Fantastic. Thanks so much. Cross. Boom. Pressure test it. This is how you're spending your entire first week, ideating that brand, localizing it, and testing it. That's week 1. Week 2, the fastest way to turn this into something you can use is to focus on job postings. So we write headlines. Remember, we talked about headlines. You're going to put them in the little H2 bracket things, but the headline for function 1 is not going to be the same headline as function 2. And you should come up with a couple of headlines for each one. You want to pressure test it? That's great. But hopefully the work you did in week 1 sets you up to say, these are the words they like to use. These are the words, this is how they think of themselves. That's important because you're not a developer, are you? You're not a programmer? I'm not, but I love to hire programmers and developers all the time. What I do is I listen to programmers and developers. I use the terms they use, embed them in the headline, and throw it out to the world because I know, who's going to understand that? Developers and programmers. It's not for me, it's for them. So you get the right bait. So test those, write some headlines for each function. You also need to write that first paragraph, why this company cares about this brand, in what way the company cares about this brand. Describe the brand as it relates to the company, the entire company. This is the first paragraph. So remember, the headline attracts attention. Maybe it sparks a question. Maybe it engages and they go, oh, I want to learn more. And there's the answer. For our company, it's this. The next step is where you can, time being limited, it's a finite resource, make as many second paragraphs for as many of those teams as you can. So if you've got 5 functions, try and write 1 paragraph for each one of those functional areas. Again, headline to spark attraction, spark interest, kind of seed that idea. The first paragraph is about how the company cares about that. The second company is how the team lives that. How do they experience it? What is their particular world and how does it lead up to that? That is what you focus on week 2. Build as many of those as you can. It doesn't have to be comprehensive. If you miss a couple of teams, if there's some teams that don't hire very often, feel free to leave them for later. Focus on the stuff that matters. I'm not big on kind of checking every T and dotting every I here. I'm really about where can I spend my time to make it matter most. That's week 2. Here's week 3. Week 3 is about putting those headlines and embedding all that stuff into job postings. Going into your ATS, open up every role, throwing in headlines, put in little HTML headers into it, whatever the ATS lets you do. Putting in those headlines, putting in those first paragraphs and second paragraphs when they're appropriate. Tell recruiters you're doing it. Say, hey, I'm trying to polish up these job postings. 9.5 times out of 10, they're like, cool, do it. Yes, anything to help. Yes, because nobody feels an emotional connection to their job posting. You're not stepping on toes by making their job postings better. Usually. However, sometimes it happens, so be aware that you should let the recruiter know and you might want to let your hiring manager know. Some recruiters say, my hiring manager doesn't care, they trust that to me. Some of them say, I'll let them know. Either way, if they have feedback, listen to it. It's useful. Don't sweat I don't think that's a good way to characterize it. You're in charge of the brand. You're trying to build the brand. If they push back enough, pull it off. Take it off. Don't fight that fight. It's too early in the game to start losing fights. This is all about creating small wins. Even if you have a hiring manager who says they completely object to whatever it is you're throwing on there, you have hiring managers who will be like, cool, do it. Show how this works with them. Make the small wins happen. That tends to spread. That's success tends to make everybody go, oh, wow, that person seems to know what they're doing. I want to be on that train too. As you're building this creative material, put it in a document of some sort. It's a living document. Let recruiters know where that is so that they can start stealing that copy too. If they have a new job posting coming up, let them know. Love it if you use this. Happy to be a resource. Love it if you just stole this to kind of set your job posting up to be better, to be stronger. That way they get to focus on the bullets and the other parts of the job posting. It saves them some time and they will like you for that. Okay. The last piece of this week, week 3, is when you start to talk to creative. Figure out what they're willing to do for you. They're swamped. They're overwhelmed. Okay, can you share the brand guidelines? Can you tell me where I'm going to get in trouble? Can you share me what the rules are? Great. I'm going to go to a Canva, a Clickfire, whatever it is, and build my own versions. Obviously, if you do that, share them and say, any objections, any issues, any fixes I need to fix, anything I need to be aware of? Let them be the owners. Let them be the professionals. Let them guide you. If they want to do it, let them do it. We've already talked about what those projects are, so we won't get into that. Hopefully, a couple of those templates come through pretty quick. And if they do, start using them. Because in week 4 is when we start to use them. This is where you want to take that headline that you wrote for the career site and embed it in the top of the career site. Week 4, career site. Take that headline that you wrote, start with a concept, you wrote a nice, cool headline for the career site, you asked the designer to make it pretty, you had to go into a tool to make it pretty, embed it on the career site. You're just making a minor change, whether it's visual, whether it's laying it on top of the hero image. Keep it simple, but start to set that frame. Look at the text on your career site. Are there minor tweaks you can make immediately to focus and align the copy towards the brand? Maybe start on the benefits section. That's usually ripe for some advancement, usually ripe for some development. Just make the minor changes it takes to align those benefits to your bigger brand. If your brand is all about performance, you can say, we offer a great supportive benefits package so that you can focus on your job and you can do the best job possible. Minor tweaks align and support the brand. The more everything seems to support, the more strong that brand gets. Set up a quick meeting with recruiters to say, look, this is the bigger picture. I've written, we've talked about your job postings. We talked about some headlines. You've seen some changes in the career site. Let me show you what I'm doing. Let me show you how you can help and what you can expect in the coming weeks. Give them a sense that this is for them, because it is, and they need to be a part of it. They can't be passive. They can't be passengers in this. They need to be engaged with it. They need to be on the bus, being helpful, helping to drive sometimes, being a navigator, whatever it is. I've taken that metaphor too far. But they need to be a part of this, and that's how this is going to work. Remind them that this work is not to replace them. This work is to elevate them. This makes their job a little easier. And the better you do this and the better they do this stuff, the easier their job will get. It is purely a value transaction. Week 5, look at your social media. Check out the last 4-ish weeks worth of content and start to look at how you could rewrite that stuff with the brand in mind. This is both an exercise, but it's also practical in that once you rewrite it, if the post wasn't particularly timely, if it wasn't Happy Thanksgiving, if it wasn't Happy Year of the Bunny, you can say, having rewritten it, you can reuse it. What you're trying to do is every new social post that gets put up there around the employer brand should point to the new brand, should reference the new brand, this new brand concept. Start by rewriting what already worked. Start by rewriting the stuff that was already useful. That's a good way to practice building that muscle of writing things around and towards that brand, but also leveraging stuff the company already cared about. They already decided to build content. As you're doing that, start scheduling them for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Start adding them in so you can do that. You're also going to start to build and write new content. I'm presuming you have a hand in writing some of that content. And it might be, hey, we have jobs open. It might be, here's a picture of us doing a thing. It might be whatever it is. If you have a hand in that, make sure everything you're writing is also brand appropriate. This is the week you focus on building a bit of an editorial calendar and building a bit of a repository of content that you can start to seed into your LinkedIn and your Twitter and Instagram or wherever you're building content to start to turn things around to focus more on your brand. That's what week 4 is. That's what week 5 is all about. Week 6, this is where things get interesting. Pick 3-ish hiring managers who you know, who you engage with, who like you, who might be willing to play a little game. And I call it a game because it always is. To me, it's just we're having fun. We're trying to find ways of making things better. It's a game. We're just playing around. Ask them if they're willing to make a 60-second video about their team. These hiring managers, if they have open roles, that should be a pretty easy ask because you're going to say, having built this video, you're going to use it to attract more people to their jobs. They're going to appreciate that. Before you hit the record button, make sure they understand the brand guidelines. Make sure that you're talking about autonomy or status or whatever that thing is, right? So that they can frame everything they talk about in that direction. You might make some tiny little edits here and there, but you're just making a 60-second video. It's keeping it simple, keeping it focused. Just say, look, we'd love to talk about your team in terms of performance. Can you talk about that for 60 seconds? Oh, yes, they can. And you let them. You don't have to have a big call to action at the end. You don't have to polish this up. You don't have to throw title credits at the beginning or end. Don't worry about that. And at this point, LinkedIn will actually do their own closed caption. There's their subtitles for that stuff. So it can be accessible just by uploading it. So don't worry about getting too complicated. Just shoot for around a 60-second video of them talking about your team. Put those videos everywhere. Stick them on YouTube, stick them on LinkedIn, start to use them in all your social channels. If you need to edit them, there's a million tools on your phone that will do it. And since you record it on your phone, that makes it easy. If you want to use something a little more advanced or something desktop, laptop specific, iMovie and DaVinci Resolve are both good tools. Actually, DaVinci is amazing and they're both free. Right? So you just download them and you start to use them. I will say, as a DaVinci fan, the learning curve is real. So if you don't feel comfortable, stick to iMovie. iMovie is really straightforward. They make it simple. At some point, as you do this, you might feel like you're maxing out your skills in iMovie. That's how I did it. You move over to DaVinci. And again, the learning curve is real, but having really nailed down what you're doing in iMovie, it makes the curve a little softer. Put those videos everywhere. If you can put them in YouTube and embed from YouTube into the job posting, do it. If you can embed it in the career site, do it. If you can say, hey, hiring manager, the video lives here. Here's the URL. Be sure to share it on your own LinkedIn and social channels to talk about your jobs, talk about your openings, whatever you're doing. Do it. This content that lives on YouTube, you might want to make a playlist just for this stuff. Employer brand content, employee testimonials, employee spotlights, whatever you want to call it. Pick a playlist. So if someone says, I'm interested in working in this company, at a couple months from now, they're going to say, here's 20 videos of all these different people talking about their teams. That's invaluable stuff. Smart move. One person at a time, because at some point, one of those people will quit. And someone, probably in HR, will say, you must remove that video. Now, personally, I don't think there's any problem having a video up there from someone who used to work there, provided what they were saying was true at the time. It's not like they disappeared. I'm simply saying, I get it. But HR is going to push back. Legal is going to push back. You're going to end up letting it go. But having one person per video makes that really easy. You just get rid of that video and away you go. Speaking from experience, it's when you try to have three people talking, it's like you start a stopwatch before one of those people quits and you have to throw the whole video away. It's just so much easier one person at a time. Once you build that repository, once you start sharing it out, that's your week 6. Week 7 is both the easiest and hardest because it's catch up. Just make sure you have social content. Make sure you've got some videos coming in. Remember, the video takes only 15 minutes to say, hey, you want to do this video? Here's what the brand is. Here's what I like you to talk about. Here's a phone. Great. Thanks. Quick edits. Upload. You're talking 15, 20, 30 minutes at a time at most, right? Keep it simple. You're not a documentary filmmaker. You are not going to win Oscars for this stuff. Keep it simple. And the more simple you get, the more authentic it will feel. It's super valuable. Check to make sure that the videos are up, that people are using them. See if you need some new graphics. Talk to your graphics team or go build your own. Make sure that your recruiters are actually using your language in their job postings or their outreach. Ask if you can help. Just check in with them. This is a catch up, regroup kind of week. Week 8. All right. Think of all you've done so far. You've built content, you've embedded the brand on job postings, on the career site, on the social copy, into what the recruiters are talking about. You've done a lot of stuff. Not to mention, you made videos, right? You didn't think you were going to do that. You totally made videos. So week 8, ask for outreach messages from your recruiters. Hey, can you give me your 3 favorite outreach messages that you use? Put them in a document and try to rewrite them for the brand. Right? Insert your brand there and say, hey, like I explained to you, if you use this bait and you attract someone who cares about autonomy, guess what? All they're going to see through this candidate journey is autonomy, making what you say more credible, more valuable, and they'll be more likely to say yes at the end. That is the compelling argument for a recruiter to make that change. Don't just make change willy-nilly and say, use this now instead. No one's going to listen to you. No one cares. But if you connect it to the larger work you're doing and saying, look, there's a larger strategy at play here. This bait may attract fewer people, but the people it attracts will be much more likely to say yes at the end of it, which is good. Ping your HR team, your HR ops, your TA ops, whatever that team is called. This is when you start thinking about offer letter. This is when you start to think about what's the email that gets sent with that offer letter. This is when you engage with your legal team to talk about how do you do this? Go look at an offer letter, go look at that email that comes with it, and see what you can do to make very simple, soft adjustments that should not make any legal changes, but legal still has to approve it. HR still has to approve it. So you're trying to find a way to make this as small a change as possible for them so they accept it. You may need to explain this brand idea to them, that you're just simply trying to align all this stuff. If you try and say it's the EVP project, you're going to rile people up. If you call it the employer brand project, it's going to freak people out. Like they're going to say, oh, does leadership know about this? They don't need to know about this yet. This is a recruiting project right now. This will turn into something bigger later. But for right now, you're simply trying to align all the recruiting messages around a couple of core ideas so that what attracts them and what they learn is what they engage with at the very end. It's a pretty simple argument, and since you're not making any radical changes to the template or to the letter, it should go okay. Give yourself time to get some pushback. Be okay with it. This will always take longer than you think. This will always be harder than you think it needs to be. That's just how it is. That's just life. So be prepared. And now we move into week 9. Week 9 is Glassdoor. Sorry. It can be any of your review sites. Go take a look at Comparably. Go take a look at any of the other sites that you might care. Indeed, I don't know. There's plenty of places people can leave reviews, good and bad. Check 1. Check 2. I don't care. Pick some older reviews that were negative. Pick a couple that it's very clear how you can use your brand to do that judo flip move that we talked about to reframe their complaint and turn it into reinforcement and validation of what your brand's all about. You do not have to respond to every review. Please don't. This is not what this is about. Remember, this is how do you get to the most impact the quickest? And wasting your time responding to every single review in the last 6 months is not the fastest way to anything except heartbreak and pain. And I want to save you from that. Pick a couple. It can be 3 or 4, right? Go back 6 months and find 3 or 4 reviews where applying the brand allows you to do the judo flip. Write some responses to that and kick them past HR and say, hey, we're trying this thing. We'd like to respond to some reviews. We picked a couple that were negative. We think we can easily flip. Here's the text I wrote. Can you take a look at it? For some reason, don't have an answer why, but for some reason, Glassdoor review responses freak people out. Your CHRO might want to get involved. Your head of HR BP will get involved. Legal might get involved. Any number of people will suddenly feel the need that they have to be involved in this process. I've worked for a lot of companies, and it's never been easy to leave a Glassdoor response for some reason. I don't know why. Here is someone saying some smack about my company, and for them, it seems like they'd rather ignore it than respond to it smartly. They're so terrified that you might say something horrible. I don't know. I really don't know why it freaks people out, but it does. So prepare yourself. You're gonna get pushback. You are going to get pushback. You are absolutely prepare for pushback. It's a guarantee. When you get it, take a deep breath, accept it, and try to move it forward. You are not eating the whole whale in one bite. Your job is to start to insert the branding thinking into some of these. If they say of the 4 reviews you wrote, 2 of them you have to throw away, then 2 of them you have to throw away, so long as you get to keep 2 more to start inserting those brand ideas. Every once in a while, maybe every month, maybe every quarter, you go through this process. And we'll talk about recurring actions down the road. But for right now, let's just start to plant that seed. The hope is, having seen job postings on the career site and talking to candidates and talking to all these people, when they do that stop at Glassdoor, as they all seem to want to do, they'll see 1 or 2 of these reviews and go, okay, this must be validating. You're not setting a frame, you're validating a frame. All right, home stretch. Week 10 is just catch up. Week 10 is just check to make sure your job postings are working, check to make sure your recruiters are using them, ask recruiters how those outreach messages are going, see what you can do to help, double check your graphics. Do you need some more graphics? Just catch up. It's all week 10 is. Just get caught up and regroup. Week 11. Time to write some good social posts. Time to really focus on writing 10 social posts that you can use over and over again. How is that possible? Well, gosh, if your brand is all about status, show someone having status, showing something, how someone is speaking at an event or how they got an award. Yeah, that happened last week, but that doesn't mean you can't reference it in 6 months, right? If your brand is all about performance, talk about the amazing products you're doing. You need to reuse it in 6 months, swap out the product name. It's not a big deal. What you want to do is have good, strong, evergreen content. The problem with social content is very often because there is that sense of we have to post, if it's Tuesday, we have to post something, that cadence-driven mentality, which, by the way, it's very common. And it turns out that I have something that's partly my fault from previous jobs. I worked in an agency where I kind of said, this is the standard. You make X number of posts every week and we just have to meet that need, whether those posts are good or not. So it's on me to some extent, but there you go. Social is driven by the calendar. If you're driven by the calendar and you always have this deadline, the metric that you care about is, did you meet the deadline? Not, did you say something useful? If you give yourself a little time to write good copy without that deadline, you tend to write better copy. You tend to write better materials. You tend to tell better stories that are more aligned to the brand that you can start to deliver as you go. Okay. So give yourself a little bit of time to write about 10 posts. Build a calendar, or at least work with your social team to see what their calendar looks like, to figure out how often should you be, or can you post to LinkedIn? Your employer brand messaging, how often does that show up? You may already have negotiated something where you have, okay, you're allowed one job posting a week and that's it. Can you have one job posting a week and one employer brand post on a weekend when no one's posting? Don't discount weekends. People show up, people look. And when people are investigating you and they scroll backwards, it shows up in that feed. It might be a nice way to kind of negotiate some space. Either way, figure out how much space you have to build content, and start in your head your own editorial calendar. How often do you have to build content? Can you build stuff in advance? Can you build evergreen branded content in advance? That's super useful. Oh, by the way, that also tells you what images you need to build. Handy. Last bit, week 12. Week 12, you've done it all. Aside from advocacy, which is a slow process, you've touched every single project we've talked about, right? You've sparked them, you've instigated them, you've kind of stoked that fire. It really works now. It's fantastic work. Great. Now in week 12, you figure out how to install repeated habits. How often do you have to check to see if job postings are being written? How often do you have to check to see Glassdoor? How often do you want to write more copy for social? What is the new expectation? You have just spent the last 12 weeks rewriting the contract you have with the company in terms of what you're talking about, how you talk about, what they expect. The thing you want to avoid is build a huge machine. Hey, we're building these tools. We have these job postings. The career site's changed, all this stuff, and then say, I'm done, because then it dies. Once you've built the machine, you need to figure out how much time can you now give this machine to keep the machine moving. What are projects that you can automate? What are projects that you can hand off? What do you need to do to install this process into your world so you can keep it moving for as long and as fast as possible with the least amount of energy? Up until the moment someone says, you're in charge of our employer brand, it's your full-time job, yay, good for you. It's all about how do you maximize? And that's what week 12 is about. So, soup to nuts, that's a 12-week plan to go from having nothing to having a lot of stuff, and doing it in the right order so they all start to support one another, right? Remember, you're building a channel, you're building a path, and every step in the channel has to have some of that brand content. You've now done the work so that as people are entering this process now, that's exactly what they're seeing. And you did it in less than a quarter. Very impressive. Thank you. Just give yourself a round of applause. That's fantastic work. Excellent stuff. Next video, repeating processes. And we're going to talk about what happens after that. There's still stuff to do. I mean, we talked about advocacy, but there's still stuff that can be done. We got you through the sprint. Now what? And we're going to talk about that next.